This is Steve Zeltzer with WorkWeek, and we've been covering the struggle of Pajaro farm workers, the flooding there, and we wanted to have an update about their conditions, their struggle to go back to their homes, and also the historic struggle of the farm workers for justice and have an environmentally safe place. So welcome to our show.
So my name is Pam Sexton, and I am a community member. I live in North Monterey County, just kind of a stone's throw from Pajaro. And I'm also involved with various organizations that work to lift up farm workers and address the issues of our climate crisis on our most vulnerable members of our community.
Hi, Steve. My name is Eloy Ortiz. I am the Special Projects Manager at Regeneración-Pajaro Climate Action. We are a local. We are the only local and regional climate related nonprofit in the area. We focus on the Pajaro Valley and assisting and educating its most vulnerable residents about the climate change and how it's going to impact them. We also do work with other nonprofits and public agencies to bring in climate mitigation and adaptation projects. I also serve on the board of directors for the Center for Farmworker Families. It is a local direct aid organization that helps farm worker families throughout the central coast of California.
And these farm workers do a critical work for our society, producing food, and they have been through a lot of difficult times, including COVID. So I mean, this flooding is adding to that. What is the situation? Because are they getting support now? And is the state of California and other agencies giving them support because they don't have a lot of money to begin with?
Yeah, so we do have some nonprofits in the area, mostly on the Santa Cruz County side, who have already started to give out aid to some farm workers. Unfortunately, they are often hampered by their requirements for providing aid. So farm workers, what it comes down to usually is farm workers who do not have documentation. A lot of farm workers come over, they don't even have identification. Their literacy level is very low. We ask them their address, they'll take a piece of paper out of their wallet. So just proving who you are is very difficult for many farm workers, especially those who are indigenous speakers. So I guess what I'm saying is, there are nonprofits who are connecting with farm workers, but those without documentation, those who cannot prove who they are, or they may not be on a lease in Pajaro, it comes down to organizations like the one I volunteer for, the Center for Farmworker Families, that can provide aid because we receive general grants from support from foundations, from supporters. But what I will tell you is it's not enough. We cannot bring in enough money through our donors to assist farm workers financially for any long-term, for any long amount of time.
And how many families are we talking about? How many workers and families are we talking about in the Pajaro Valley?
I know that thousands. I know it's 2,000 to 3,000 people have been evacuated. And so we're talking about both farm workers who were living in Pajaro in extremely overcrowded, dense accommodations. And we're also talking about small businesses that serve that community. A lot of those businesses were also renting their spaces. So we've got, vulnerable local businesses alongside extremely vulnerable farm workers who, when I say dense population, like we're talking sometimes 3 families in a house that's meant for, 2 or 3 people, bunk beds, and it's people try to, it's not being homeless, but it's not standard accommodations. And
where are these families staying
so
now?
when you see when you go to Pajaro now, because Pajaro opened up on Thursday of last week, it opened up so that families and businesses could come back and assess their properties. But there's still no clean water, and it'll be weeks before there's clean water. A lot of families are not able to stay there. They're still in temporary shelters. I know Eloy just visited today. I visited on Friday was the last time I was there. Eloy, do you want to talk about what you saw today?
So I did walk from downtown Watsonville, just right over the bridge to Pajaro Middle School, which is kind of in the central area of the town. As you walk through, what you see is people have basically gutted their homes and have put it on the sidewalk. It's just very. It feels like a post-apocalyptic movie almost, where you see a character kind of walking through the remains of a town. That's what it feels like. You see people just kind of cleaning the mud out still. We talked to a market owner who her family, they've been working on her market since Thursday, and they're still kind of getting all the mud out. I actually... I stepped in in the mud today, and I can tell you, it's. I've tried to spray it off, but it's still with me. It stays with you. It's thick, and one thing that I can talk. One thing is talking about it, but being there and kind of smelling. You can already smell kind of the odors of the sediment and the the human material kind of all mixed together. I kind of fear for people just inhaling kind of the air of that mixture as it gets heated up, as we go into the spring and summer, and it's just going to be it's not a good situation. There are people who want to, I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off, but there are people who want to help, and they bring things, but there's no place to kind of set up a resource center. It's a very congested area. There, as Pam said, there are multiple families living in a home. There aren't any parking spaces. So people want to come to Pajaro and bring farm worker supplies, but there's literally nowhere that's an open space to kind of host these people, these Good Samaritans who want to bring in resources. As a group came and they literally blocked off the sidewalk because there was nowhere for them to set up. It's just, it's an under-resourced community. It's a poorly planned community. It's a forgotten community. And that's what people, if you talk to people there who've been there a long time, that's what they will tell you. That's what they feel like.
And President Biden came to Santa Cruz during another, catastrophe. And there are facilities. There's the county fairgrounds. Why hasn't the county and the state made sure that there's housing for these people? Because they're critical, the necessity that they face, and it sounds like there are thousands of them.
What I could say, what we first should say is Pajaro is located in Monterey County. So so Biden did come to Santa Cruz County, even though he did land in Watsonville and there was damage in Watsonville. He did not tour Watsonville. Of course, he went to Capitola, which, hey, if I could, I like Capitola Village also. But Pajaro is in Monterey County. What I will say is Pajaro is geographically separated from the rest of Monterey. It's culturally separated from the rest of Monterey County. It's language-wise, there's quite a discrepancy between Pajaro and the rest of Monterey County. Many farm workers over the past 10 years have come from our indigenous language speakers from Oaxaca. So they speak one of several indigenous languages. So there's just kind of a cultural, geographical Yeah, it's just a disinvestment, disinvestment of that particular community. Again, what I will tell you is the residents, long-term residents, feel like they are not getting support from Monterey County, and they are not getting support, and they feel more connected to Watsonville because they're just connected to Watsonville over the bridge, but they're also feel like, even though they are connected to Watsonville, they're like the forgotten stepchild of both areas.
And there was some reporting that they knew that there was a weakness of the levee that could have been prevented if they had done the proper maintenance of that levee, but that wasn't done in part because of the area, the poverty, and the fact it was low income, a working class farm worker community. Is that true?
That's true. That's true. And so it has to do with this cost benefit analysis. And this speaks to the systemic economic inequities and systemic racial injustice. So because of very low property rates, even though back in the 1960s, the Army Corps of Engineer reports said, okay, we've got, this is substandard, there needs to be work done on this levee. Since the 60s, it wasn't done. It was just approved some months ago to have it done in 2024. Well, now this has happened. This was known for decades, and it could have been prevented. So, yeah, one of the things I've been trying to tell people, like my family will call and ask if I'm okay. Yes, I'm okay. And to be clear, this is not a natural disaster. This is a disaster caused by neglect, and the neglect of a community, as Eloy said, that continues to be neglected, that is disenfranchised, disregarded, because they are largely undocumented. It feels to many of the people I talk to what I see, it's like they're discardable, and we're saying no, they're not, and we're calling on our local county officials to first implement a eviction moratorium. Families and these small businesses I mentioned are at risk of being evicted. Crisis on top of crisis, and then other supports that are going to help people really recover. And at the state level also, it was just recently decided, like the criteria wasn't met for FEMA because of these same calculations that are based on the property value. And because the residential property value is so low, it didn't meet FEMA requirements. Again, discarding the human cost here. So what we're speaking to is an issue of human rights and righting a long time wrong.
And Eloy, this environmental crisis that we're facing, the kind of weather changes, climate changes, are just getting started. I mean, they've been really wild tornadoes, like hurricane winds. I mean, it seems like we're facing a very dangerous situation for the people of Pajaro and the people of California. It doesn't sound like there's an emergency really plan by the state, by government to deal with this crisis, because of course people who are poor or indigenous workers, they are the ones least protected and the least resources to defend themselves in the face of what's coming.
Yes. So we have farm workers who have gone from COVID, who then restarted working, who have been subjected to the 2020, breathing the air from the 2020 wildfires during the summer. Then heat waves. We had heat waves all through last summer, where in Santa Cruz County, you can track on the county's website the increases in high heat days. So you have people who cannot who basically cannot afford to not work. So, you and I, if we were you and I who have PTO, who have vacation pay, who have sick pay, who have Social Security benefits, and can retire, farm workers do not have any of those things. So, basically, if a farm worker is out and they're not feeling comfortable in heat or in hot air, breathing in smoke from smoky air, they have a choice. They can go home, but they will not get paid. They will not be able to feed their family for that day or pay rent, and one thing I will say is farm workers will prefer not eating to not paying rent, because if they pay rent, they'll still have a roof over their head. So that's we have heard that people will go without eating, and anyways. So we have a climate crisis again that is impacting our most vulnerable people. Climate crisis again that is impacting our most vulnerable people. We've again going from the hot air, from the smoky air, to the heat waves, and now the weather whiplash back to flooding. And one thing is for the federal government to say, "Hey, farm workers are not," it's the cost benefit analysis does not work out for farm workers. Well, the one thing that farm workers do is they help feed the United States. So in January, when we had the winter storms come through, we saw that fields were being taken offline. We saw that the strawberry season was going to be delayed. So now with these new storms, not only will more fields be taken offline because of the flooding, but it's not just waiting for the land to dry out. Pesticides that were sprayed have been spread all over the fields. So not only do the fields have to be dried out, but there have to be environmental impact reports. Fields have to be tested. So the strawberry season and the agricultural season will be pushed back even further. It's probably for what I've heard is a 2-month range. And then when the farmers will be able to start planting, there will be less work because there will be more fields taken offline, and there'll be less plants that will be able to be planted quickly and harvested in the fall. So again, we go back to drought. To the California drought that started a few years ago, there was less work because there was no water. And now we have the flooding, so there will be less work because of the flooding. All for people, again, no PTO, no sick pay, no Social Security, no retirement benefits. How do you as a farm worker retire? The average age for farm workers is 49. They don't retire.
And Pamela, you're a member of the Teachers Union, Pajaro Valley Teachers Federation. And you have been dealing with both adults and their families and children. How are they getting education now as a result of this calamity?
Yeah, the school district has been, teachers have been working super hard to ensure that the students who were displaced and the school, so Pajaro Valley Middle School was completely flooded, Pajaro Middle School. And so there won't be people back in there for classes for the rest of this semester at least. And so all of those students have been moved to another middle school, which is sharing. So they've got 2 middle schools now housed at one. But definitely some families are struggling with how to deal with the upheaval of their school, upheaval of their home, obviously, upheaval of jobs and economic stability. As Eloy said, it's not going to be, even when the fields dry out, they're not going to be able to start planting again quickly. So it's going to take quite some time to get any kind of stability for the community, and the this issue of contamination of the fields and contamination even in the houses. I was there this past weekend, and some people were wearing masks because they were afraid of either the mold or very like chemicals, pesticides that may have been in the water and now are in their houses.
And the state of California has some responsibility. Has Governor Newsom been contacted? I mean, what is the state doing? Because there are resources, there should be resources in the state of California to help these farm workers, to help this community.
So the state, Nusa did come to speak, was it last week or the week before? And it caused quite a stir around here, not only because he was here, but he did admit that, the neglect of the levee was on part of the state's fault. He said all the right things in terms of, that the levee was neglected because this was a farm worker town, so it wasn't a priority. He did announce that there were farm workers with or without documentation would receive $600 gift cards, which was part of actually a USDA COVID program that has been had been planned for about 3 years. So this was not new money, but he made it sound like it was new money that was found, and he brought to the farm workers, and that would have been okay too. But $600 is just not a lot. People pay $1,600 for a room in a home. What's a $600 gift card is just not, it's not a lot. So, and again, these people, a lot of folks have lost everything. There are some folks who came through unscathed. I've spoken to a lot where they're on higher ground and nothing happened to their homes. But if you walk through Pajaro, kind of the center of town, you'll see that a lot of people have lost almost everything. A lot of people lost their cars. We're in Santa Cruz County. We're in Central Coast, California. These are farm workers. There's no public transportation that's running from their area to a farm, to a field on a farm. And even if they're not farm workers, we have very poor public transportation in this area. So, people need cars. They need money. They need, they need a whole set of clothes. And quite frankly, a lot of them are going to need to live in a new place because, that mud, and I'm telling you, the smell of the mud it's going to be a story soon. It's going to be something it's going to be a story soon, and I wouldn't be surprised if people got sick.
Okay, well, I want to thank both of you for joining us on WorkWeek, and I think that the working people, the people of California, have a responsibility to protect and defend the farm workers, the farm worker families of Pajaro. They're essential, they're critical to our society. And they're producing the food that we eat. And having a healthy, well taken care of farm worker community is critical to the people of California. So I hope people are more aware. And I think that we have to go back to this and really build a movement in California to make sure that these farm workers and their families are defended in one of the richest places in the world.
Yes. The impact to the rest of the country in terms of food prices, I wouldn't be surprised if food prices increase even more than they already have.
Okay, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Great.